Thank you very much, Professor Mintzberg, for being with us.
Pleasure to be here.
You've researched and wrote on many issues. One of them is on management.
Right.
And you compare management with a symphony orchestra and different roles there. Can you share those stories or parables?
Yeah, well, management's loaded with myths. I mean, we're just loaded with myths of all kinds. And one of the myths is the manager sitting on the podium conducting the orchestra, and you go like this, and the accountants all play, and you go like this, and marketing comes in, and then sales comes in, and everything's glorious, except it's not like that at all. And a fellow named Len Sales, who studied American middle managers, said, it's like an orchestra conductor, all right, but during rehearsals, not during performance, where everything's going wrong, and the stagehands are making noise, and people aren't playing right, and everything's going wrong. So the myths die very strong, but managers like to think of themselves as very grand. Some managers do, anyway.
And what would be the right myth, the right comparison of what a manager is?
Well, the orchestra conducting during rehearsal is not a bad idea. I like the phrase calculated chaos,
Okay.
controlled disorder. Managerial work is not organized very well because you never know what's going to happen next. So managerial work has to be very adaptable, very flexible. You have an expression in Brazil, don't you, about finding the way around, and that's how do you say it in Portuguese?
Jeito.
Yeah, and managing is very much like that. Brazilians probably make very good managers because of that.
Would you distinguish management from leadership, and if so, how?
No. Would you like to hear more? I think it's a dangerous distinction.
Why?
Because managers who don't lead, nobody wants a manager who doesn't lead. A manager who doesn't lead there's no inspiration, there's no feeling, there's no oomph. A leader who doesn't manage doesn't know what's going on. They're disconnected. And we have this idea of grand leaders who sit up on top of these orchestra pedestals and sort of lead that way. And that's not leadership. That's disconnection. That's detachment. So I believe that leadership and management have to be combined.
And how do you develop leadership abilities and managerial abilities?
You don't.
Okay.
At least you don't create leaders in a classroom. You don't create managers in a classroom. You simply don't do that. And anybody who believes that is dangerous. Okay. Anybody who comes out of the Harvard Business School with an MBA should have a skull and crossbones, the pirate
Yes.
on their head saying, warning, not prepared to manage. Because there's nothing you can do in a classroom to turn someone into a manager or into a leader. On the Harvard Business School MBA website, the word leader or leadership appears 55 times. It's a sham. It's a sham. They don't create leaders. George Bush went through the Harvard Business School. You don't create leaders that way.
He got quite far. He became president of the United States.
Partly thanks to his Harvard MBA. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But lots of managers got far, and their financial institutions are collapsing under them. Wagoner got far running General Motors, and that's collapsing around him. So there's another Harvard MBA. So there's no shortage of...
We'll come back to the...
You see, what Harvard does is it gives you the opportunity to move ahead. You have the old boys network, you have the status, you're fast talking, you learn how to make an argument in a case study discussion, and you learn how to make that argument based on 20 pages read before about a company you know nothing about besides those 20 pages. What kind of a manager or leader does that make? What you can do is take people who are leaders, who are managers, and you bring them into the classroom to work with each other and reflect with each other on their own experience and learn from their own experience. So you don't turn them into leaders or managers. You take those managerial skills and experience and leadership experience and you use it to enhance their understanding of themselves.
But you just said that you don't do that in a classroom, and you're describing a classroom environment.
You can do that in a classroom. You can't create a manager or a leader in a classroom, but you can take people who are leaders and managers and do wonderful things for them in the classroom by letting them learn from their own experience.
So you need previous leaders to go into the classroom.
Established leaders, yeah.
So how does anyone become a leader? Or is it for everyone to be a leader? What are the characteristics to be a leader in the first place?
First of all, there's no such a thing as a leader for everything. So leadership works in the time, in the context, in the situation. So sometimes the right person appears at the right time and exhibits leadership capability. I mean they're capable of leading in other contexts. So leadership is not a generic thing. Is leadership born or made? Leadership is born and made. It's born in the sense that not everybody is born to be a leader or a manager for sure, but through your personal experience and your challenges in life and the difficulties you face, kinds of jobs you have, you learn your way with the potential from birth. You learn your way into leadership and management capabilities. So, and you do that through experience on the job. And then we can come in as academics in a university setting or management development programs and enhance and enable those people to enhance their capabilities.
In your experience, what would be the 2 or 3 key characteristics of leaders?
I'm going to give you a particular answer to that because I'm writing a book now called Managing, and the last chapter is called Managing Effectively, and I open the chapter with what are the qualities of the effective manager/leader.
Okay, so that's an advance on your new book.
A little bit of an advance on my new book, and I basically say, well, find a list. There are lots of lists, and I find one list, and I list the 6 or 8 characteristics on that list, because every list, you can't have a list of 40 characteristics.
No.
So you have a list of 6 or 8 characteristics. So I list them, and then I say, oh, wait a minute, where's intelligence on this list? Where's energy on this list? Surely effective managers are intelligent. Surely they have energy. So we have to add a couple more. And I said, basically, we have to put all the lists together. So I took all the lists I could find, and I came up with 38 qualities that you must have to be an effective manager. And I added one more, tall. Because no list has tall, but that's the only one for which we have empirical evidence, that on average, leaders and managers are taller on average than other people.
Well, Jack Welch is not tall, or
no,
Napoleon
wasn't tall, but on average. So I facetiously add tall to the list. And basically I say, if you want to be an effective manager, you have to be all 38 of these characteristics. But Superman wouldn't even qualify. I mean, kryptonite, if kryptonite was on the list, Superman wouldn't qualify. So I conclude that effective managers and leaders are flawed. Everybody is flawed. But in the job, they're not fatally flawed.
Okay.
So this idea of finding the magic formula for what makes people, it's a question of what the job is and what their characteristics are and whether their flaws are not fatal. If you want to find out what somebody's flaws are, marry them or work for them. And you'll find out very quickly what their flaws are. But if you're a mature human being, you also realize that in most cases you can live with those people and even admire them, even though they're flawed, because we're all flawed. So there's no magic formula for... I have my favorite characteristics.
Come on, go for those.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just...
Empathy, or,
thoughtfulness I put high on my list. Empathy, a sort of an understanding of people, a concern, an ability to deal with people. On the other hand, there are some miserable SOBs who are effective in certain conditions. People who are thoughtless, I'm not sure there's too many effective managers who are thoughtless. George Bush is thoughtless, but I don't think he was a huge success. So Welsh is very smart, and he thinks for himself. And I think really good managers and leaders think for themselves. They don't follow the crowd. They don't buy subprime mortgages because everybody's buying subprime mortgages. They're in touch. I think they know what's going on. I think they don't micromanage. They just know what's going on. There's a difference between micromanaging and knowing what's going on.